Well, you must be the new potential. What are you waiting for? Sit down. I don't have all day. Alright, now let's see. What was your name again? Oh, that's right. Where did I put that? Somewhere in all this crap. Here we are. Yeah. Your papers got forwarded to me. You've already been through an extensive process and you've been approved. So far. There's only one person left to impress. And that would be the Warden. But the Warden is a mighty busy person, you know. So before you go kissing ass, we're gonna have a little chat. And based on how well this little chat goes, you'll get to speak to the Warden directly. I'm the gatekeeper of sorts. I decide who is worth the Warden's time. And I will warn you that the Warden is very particular. So I am very particular. Now you may have been able to charm or gussy up all those other fellas that you spoke to, but that won't work on me. The moment I suspect that you are embellishing or coloring the truth, I will turn you away. Don't give me any of those bathroom mirror speeches, alright? I mean it. The Warden does not have time to play games, and neither do I. This job demands a lot of attention, and I don't have much of it to spare. Speaking of, let's start with why you want this job. I've already viewed your Akashics. Your past 3 lives were very well documented. You've done quite well for yourself over your cycles. Got your name on all kinds of fancy papers. You're smart. You spent the last 3 of your lives dedicated to your research. And before you left your last life, you put it all in one tidy little book. I read the thing. Well, I didn't say I liked it. I guess I'm just having a hard time piecing together why someone like that would want a job like this. I do have my theories, of course. My main one being that now you've written your magnum opus, you're just downright bored. Looking for something a little different. And I can respect that. I can. But this isn't the place you come to try something a little different. Most guards here have lifetimes of experience. At the very least, they've spent a lot longer in law enforcement than someone like yourself. These guards are highly trained and highly experienced. So I guess I would just like to know what makes you, with no experience of this kind, so eligible. What is it you're hoping to do here exactly? No, like I said, I will decide if you get to speak to the Warden. So if there is something you've been holding on to, then you better say it. Because unless I judge it worthy, you won't be having that meeting. And I will be honest, I'm not very convinced. You do understand what we do here, yes? I mean, completely, fully, truly understand it. It's not like the old days anymore. It's more involved, a delicate process. You have one goal here and one goal only, and that is to keep the prisoners alive, despite all their very best efforts to change that fact. And it is not nearly as easy a thing to do as you might think. At least not anymore. See, in the old days, it was easier. In the old days, we were just given one directive and free rein to carry it out. You might have even thought us more of a hospital than a prison back in those days. Of course, that was because we had the money to run like one. You could keep prisoners in a coma pretty much until their clock ran out. And maybe that's what you think is still happening. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but it's not. Things started changing. More and more cycles in. Priorities began to change. The money began to change. The ethics began to change. But the directives didn't. Keep them alive. So when the money changed, we had to make do. No more easy sleeping through the sentence. Had to find new ways to keep them alive. Which is hard to do because killing yourself is not as difficult as you might imagine. Especially when you're so determined to start all over. They'd bite off their tongues, so we took them out. They'd claw at their throats, so we took their fingers. They'd beat their heads on the wall, so we kept them restrained. And then the ethics changed. Now I won't tell you if they're right or wrong. If you want to ask those kind of questions, then you need to go back to your fancy universities. I'll just tell you that it made our job even harder. It's not easy. It's not pretty. And if it's not something you are prepared for, I don't honestly think it's something you can do. We haven't lost an inmate in nearly 6 years. That's one of the best records in the country. And all it takes is a single person who thinks they know better, going against protocol, to ruin all of that. Even just a minor mistake can cost us an inmate. And then you know what happens? They're back out there, on the loose, free to do it all over again. We hold some of the worst criminals in the country here at this facility. Real monsters. These are not the people you want to see giving the wheel another spin. We keep them alive for as long as humanly possible. If we could keep them alive for longer, then we would. Because that keeps them off the streets. That keeps people safe. You spend lifetimes doing the things that these people have done. Another roll of the dice won't change them. We have a lot of repeats here. New bodies, but the same people. And they always come back worse than before. And if you slip up, which is highly likely, given how unexperienced you are in law enforcement, and one of them punches out, when they punch back in and pick up right where they left off, that blood will be on your hands. And you know what? I think you know that. I think you're smart, but I don't think you're heartless. I read your book. If anything, you're too sensitive for the plights of others. You know what's at stake, and I'm a good judge of character. I don't think you would ever want to do something that could end up causing other people's suffering. So I think there's a reason why you're here. There is a reason you want this job. And there is a reason that you have been cleared time and time again so you could sit in that very chair and try to convince me to let you plead it to the Warden. I want to know what it is. I want to know what you want. I want to know what you're planning. And if you don't answer that question, then we have nothing more to say, and you need to leave. An experiment? What kind of experiment? You've got to be kidding me. This isn't a science lab for you to play around in. Besides, if someone like you wants to experiment, I am sure there is no shortage of investors who would be lining up to give you everything you wanted. Why do you need to come here and be a prison guard? How exactly does that benefit your research? You want to observe prisoners. You want to hear what they say without them knowing that you're some fancy shrink. Well, it's not like you could get them to shut up half the time. But I don't see how this helps you. More importantly, I don't see how it can help us. I don't have anything against the pursuit of knowledge, but you would have to actually do the job. And if your main focus is elsewhere, then you are even more likely to slip up. Why would the Warden entertain this? Well, I'm all for rehabilitation. But that's not exactly possible. And where it is possible, it's not easy. They gave up on those programs nearly 150 years ago. Had to prioritize keeping them alive versus the slim possibility of rehab. But also, remember, these aren't ordinary criminals here. These are the worst of the worst. Even if the rehab programs were still operational, these inmates wouldn't qualify for them. In your book, you talk about how extreme repeated violence through lifetimes can cause a fundamental change in the mind. Start coming back different from everyone else. I would say everyone in this prison is an extreme example of that. You say yourself, the more these changes take root, the harder it is to weed them out. I don't know if trying to develop some new rehabilitation program is worth the risk of them getting back out again. So you want to reset them? What does that mean? You really think that's possible? To completely reset someone? Their memories, their instincts, so they restart with a blank slate? Is that what you're going to try and do here? I see. So actual experimenting is decades out. You're just trying to get a more up-close and personal experience with the minds in question. I won't pretend that I know much about science and psychology. Certainly not as much as you do. But I know my job very well. And if you're serious about doing this, then you need to be a guard first and a scientist second. But who knows? Maybe a unique perspective from the outside can actually do some good. If you can do the job, good. If you can find a way to make my job obsolete, then all the better. I'll offer you an apprenticeship of sorts. You'll need to take it slow. Go through all the proper training. You won't be left alone. You'll have a mentor, your superior. You will do everything they tell you when they tell you to do it. If at any point in time you break one of their rules, or you break one of mine, or you do something that jeopardizes either my guards or my inmates, you are done. Effective immediately. If you don't screw up, then I will evaluate you at the end of the year and decide whether or not to allow you to continue. Do you find that satisfactory? Good. Then you'll start right now. I'll have someone escort you to the barracks. I'm sure by now you've caught on to who the Warden is. Never forget that this is my house. You're all just living in it.